With a bit of a boring day of the trade period done and dusted, I thought it would be worth having a look at the best player deal every club has had since 2020. So, of the half a decade so far, as we look to the end of this trade period. Now, what happens with picks after they were traded out is not factored in the slightest. I'll still tell you what happened to the picks when they finally landed and came to fruition, but all of the trades in between are not going to be a factor. It's the best value player pickup trade your team has had. And trust me, some of these are more grim than others, let me tell you, but let's get into it. In 21, Adelaide traded a future first to Sydney that ended up becoming Josh Weddle at Hawthorn. The reason why this is above the Isaac Rankin one, which in my opinion are the only two that it ever could have been for the Crows, is that Rankin ended up getting Bailey Humphrey and Joel Frazier, who I just think ends up being a better trade package because Weddle ended up telling recruiters that he wasn't leaving Victoria. Now, I don't love that this happens in the AFL, and I know that it benefited my Hawks, so to sit here and go, well, it's okay for others to do it, but not Josh, would be hypocritical. So a little bit unlucky for the Swans in this regard, because they were very much interested in Josh Weddle, and him and Nick Blakey in the same team would be frightening. But overall, the Crows giving away a future first-round pick for a perennial Brownlow voting getting captain and just one of the better leaders in the competition is an A+ move for mine, and has been one of the reasons the Crows have been able to accelerate their way up the ladder, eventually finishing as minor premiers this year, as we know. In 22, Brisbane received Josh Dunkley and pick 47, which wasn't used. For pick 21, Charlie Clark, a future first-round pick being Riley Hardiman, and a future second and fourth that were both not used. Now, from here on out, I'm not going to do the not used anymore because I'm just going to end up repeating myself a whole lot. If I don't give you a player name after the pick, just assume it wasn't used. And it's also on the screen for those of you that are watching, so I don't need to keep repeating myself. We've got that on record. Beautiful. Do I even need to explain why this is a really good trade for Brisbane? Now, again, part of the consequences of this is not necessarily the end journey, it's the picks itself. But Josh Dunkley and a third-round pick for two firsts, a second, and a fourth, you would be doing that trade over again every day of the week and twice on grand final day, because this man takes the piss out of premierships. An absolute star and a genuine fleecing now that we know what happens with this trade in hindsight. Carlton in 22 got Blake Acres for a future third, but it ended up being Zane Sakostelski for the Lions. And this is grim because it's basically him or Adam Chera, and the Chera trade ended up being Jai Amos. Now, structurally, it makes sense that Amos is not around Curnow and Mackay, or wasn't during that time. The Chera trade made sense at the time, considering the list need that Carlton wanted. So even though Chera is fine, I know he finished high up in the best and fairest this year, but he is a good third midfielder. Kind of makes me doubtful over second. That's pretty much where we're at with him. Cripps, Walsh makes more sense. I think Walsh just needs to go ahead. But you got Jagger Smith coming through. All of that sort of is what it is, I suppose. But overall, the Acres one makes more sense. He was paramount to the final success of the Blues only a couple of years ago, playing a true, duet of incredible finals games. We haven't seen Sakostelski yet for Brisbane, so that throwaway pick for a guy who was instrumental in a couple of finals wins is a pretty easy pick for mine, even if he is on the outer, it seems, in this trade period. In 22, Collingwood traded for Bobby Hill and pick 40 for pick 43 that ended up being Max Noble, and a future second that was Liam Fawcett. Well, let me tell you that the Liam Fawcett, it's not going to be the last time his name gets brought up in this video, just because of the way that pick swaps work and all of those sorts of things. So just before you go, you've already said his name later on in the video. That's how it works, guys, okay? So chill. But you got a Norm Smith medalist basically for nothing. There were no bad consequences that arrived from this trade at all. Is a genuine win. Max Noble is not even on a list anymore. If he is, I think he's a Gold Coast. I don't even remember if they retained him or not. I don't know what it is about the gap in my knowledge that tells me that just non-mainstream ruckman just seemed to escape the stratosphere for me neurologically. But yeah, this is incredible. And what's also more incredible about this is the bloke that I think came second in that Norm Smith medal, Tom Mitchell, was also a fleecing. Genuine fleecing. Made sense for Hawthorn to let him go. but two incredible deals that helped the Pies win a flag. Incredible work. It doesn't look like the Pies are going to get Jimmy Rowbottom, though, so enjoy these trades. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot happening at the Pies this year. At the start of the decade, the Bombers received Jai Caldwell and pick 44 that ended up being Harry Sharp, and pick 74 for pick 29, and a future second that ended up being James Willis. Caldwell is the only good thing in this deal. Let's be completely honest here. Few not used. Willis hasn't turned out to have played a game, I don't think, off the top of my head. So, yeah, this wins. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, Daz, Peter Wright for a 4th round pick that actually wasn't used. So they effectively got Peter Wright for free, Daz. He kicked 53 goals in a season. That was 3 years ago. He's kicked 66 goals in 3 seasons since. Jai Caldwell, yes, did get injured, but in 11 games this year, averaged 26 disposals, and I think he's going to be part of either a merit-led or a meritless Essendon midfield. I am a huge Jai Caldwell fan, and that's why I'm going to give him the nod. So, yeah, that I don't mind if you disagree. I'm not going to say that I'm right and you're wrong. It's just my opinion. You're going to disagree with some of them. I'm going with Caldwell trajectory-wise. In 21, Freo received Jordan Clark and a 4th for pick 22 that ended up being Toby Conway, and a 22 third that ended up being Jack O'Sullivan. Didn't quite work out at the Hawks, did Joss, but yeah, massive win for Freo. He is an all-Australian halfback flanker, one of the better rebounding defenders in the league. And also, Luke Jackson's trade could absolutely be on here, by the way. So I have no qualms about disagreeing there whatsoever. I gave Clark the nod for one pretty simple reason. He's delivered the quality for a few more seasons than Jackson has. It's as simple as that. That's the only reason. Is it a great one? Probably not. But I'm going to give the love to Jordan Clark, who somehow I still think is low-key underrated. Luke Jackson being the unicorn, the premiership winning second ruckman at Melbourne when he was, with how good he was this year as well. I just think Clark deserves the nod just for being underrated, a quality player, and also I think it's a trade that doesn't get talked about enough. So Jordan wins. At the start of the decade, Geelong traded for Jeremy Cameron, received 2 future seconds. One ended up being in the James Willis deal, the other being Paul Curtis to North Melbourne, by the way, which is kind of cool. And they gave up 3 first-round picks that ended up being Connor Stone, Ryan Angwin, and then Braden Cook on trading to Adelaide. Bailey Smith could very well end up being sort of the fleecing as we go through. Now, Max Holmes won the best and fairest this year. We'll see what Baz looks like long-term at the Cats, but given what Jeremy Cameron has given that football club up forward, both in tandem with Tom Hawkins, and now that, of course, Hawkins isn't there and he's still dominated the Coleman medal and takes the genuine piss, I still think Jeremy Cameron is the best half-forward flanker I've ever seen. I think it's just a shame he's 2 inches too tall to be recognised as one. Geelong are looking at Charlie Curnow to partner with him. The Shannon Neal, I'm not saying experiment has failed, but we'll wait and see if Shannon Neal can be something if they don't end up landing Curnow, which is looking more and more unlikely. We'll wait and see, but Jezza is a freak. Gold Coast just did not take advantage of this at all. What a draft to effectively just go, yeah, let's throw these 3 at you. They don't even matter. And they didn't. That 20 draft was awful. Genuinely crap. So, yeah, massive win. Even if one of the picks that they got was on-traded and end up being Paul Curtis, one of my favourite non-Hawthorn players in the league. This is just an absolute fleecing. And you would do this deal over again any day of the week. And in a weekend draft like this one, the 3 first-round picks for Curnow make sense. From Geelong, it makes even more sense that Carlton said, stick it up you. Gold Coast in 22 got Ben Long and a future 4th for pick 32 that ended up being on-traded to the Saints for Ollie Houghton. Now, John Noble probably gets consideration here, but the list for the Suns is actually kind of grim, to be perfectly honest with you. So, yeah, going to go with Ben Long. He's kicked 71 goals in the last 2 seasons, adds a little bit of a dynamicism, if you will, to that forward line. It's what Adelaide kind of want out of Calamarchi, if I'm being perfectly honest, which is all good. Ben Long wasn't anything spectacular at St Kilda, and I'm not ready to put him in the A-grade echelon of forwards, by the way, but for what he's been able to contribute to the Suns, awesome, elite. This is what you'd throw away a pick 32 for. Beautiful. Love it. Speaking of grim lists, there have been 4 players traded to the Giants since the start of the 20s. Do you want to have a guess as to who they are? Jake Stringer last year, Toby Bedford, Braden Pruce, And the obvious winner, the one we're all thinking of, Jesse Hogan, who ended up arriving at GWS, and they gave up pick 56, who on-traded to Brisbane for Henry Smith. He won a Coleman at the Giants. Case closed, really. What else is there to say? Hopefully he can get back on the park, be a little bit more healthy. I am worried about the Giants next year. I'm going to do the Oliver reaction when and if it goes through. That's all well and good, but yeah, they're weird. So weird. And culturally, the Giants have been able to turn around Jesse. It looks like they've been able to be a massively positive influence on his life as well, which is more important than what he's like on the footy field. And he has paid them back in spades so far, and hopefully has a year or two of that prime goal-kicking nous to deliver to the big sound on the west side of town. The amount of deals that Hawthorn had that would have been the number one deal for so many other teams is genuinely stupid. Massimo D'Ambrosio was given up for 2 fourth-round picks that weren't used. The Jack Ginnivan deal was an extraordinary fleece of the Pies. Lloyd Meek to Freo, and we got a second-round pick there and gave up, I think, Jaeger in a third or a fourth or something. Extraordinarily good. Marbior Chol was effectively given up for free as well. However, I have to go with last year's best and fairest winner, or last season's best and fairest winner, the Jack Gunston return from Brisbane, because even though the Hawks didn't use the other 2 picks, 47 and 61, and a future second, my apologies, they gave up Brandon Ryan, who didn't play. They gave up Brandon Ryan, who's been delisted, pick 39, who's Luke Lloyd, we haven't seen yet, and then the future fourth that ended up being Hamish Davis at West Coast. Let's be honest, we got 74 odd goals for nothing. Genuinely nothing. And I was with Talking Hawks at the time. The fact that I was on the live stream when that happened, like we went live after that deal went down, and I was on with Liam and we had a chat about this, and we were astounded at the amount of people that were like, why did we give up? Because some of the things that we got, it kind of interlaced with Chol, but we effectively got rid of Brandon Ryan and brought Chol in. And the fact that people at the time were going, there's not a lot of difference between the two, we were astounded at the time, and it's only aged brilliantly now. But yeah, the amount of fleeces that we've done, no wonder people are annoyed that we might get Zach Merritt. My God, what a genuine pleasure it was to do this part of the research on my favourite football club. At the start of the decade, Melbourne traded for Ben Brown. They also got pick 28 that ended up being Fraser Rosman, and a future fourth for pick 26 that ended up being Liam McMahon the first time he was drafted, pick 33, and a future fourth that ended up being Jackson Archer, or the points used for Jackson Archer. As far as I'm concerned, you gave up basically nothing and got a premiership winning forward. That's a pretty good deal in my eyes. The Ben Brown negotiations with North are always going to be weird, and I think sit uncomfortably with a lot of North Melbourne connected people, but went to Melbourne, got his flag. Love it for him, I suppose. And look, I'm a big fan of Jackson Archer. I hope that he can be healthy, but let's be honest, in hindsight, a fleecing. North Melbourne last year traded for Luke Parker and Jacob Constanti for pick 44 that ended up being Riley Bice. Bit of a phenom in the first half of the season was Riley, but Luke Parker delivered everything that North Melbourne could have asked for in spades. There is a lot of fan conjecture about what Constantine is going to bring to the future. He and Charlie Spargo are seemingly going to be fighting for a forward spot, so it's going to be interesting to see how that ends up. But overall, the Parker deal is a massive win. It suited Sydney because they had to get rid of some veteran talent. Bice is hopefully going to deliver some more lethal left foot goodness for the Swans, but seriously, I highly recommend you researching the other player deals that North Melbourne have done in the last few years, like Dylan Stevens, Atu Bosindavalagi, Jaden Stevenson, Darcy Tucker. No, it's Luke Parker, basically. At the start of the decade, Port Adelaide traded for Alir and gave up a future second that ended up going its way to West Coast eventually. Incredible. Genuinely incredible that they were able to do this. Really good trade for Port. We'll see how he goes next year. Hopefully his health is in really good order and Port Adelaide can establish a bit of a defensive identity, something that they have lacked since they have tumbled down the contendership in the last couple of years. Even though they made a prelim in 24, defensively they were just exposed. And they have been in finals. Now with the new era under Josh Carr, they're going to need to find that defensive identity real quick. Richmond in 22 traded for Tim Taranto, gave up 2 first-round picks, one being Elijah Hewitt, one being Maxi G, that ended up arriving at GWS, of course. The pick 12 ended up going to West Coast. Again, this one just should hopefully seem obvious. Richmond haven't actually done a whole lot of player trades since the start of the decade for obvious reasons. They were busy winning a flag early and then stockpiling talent from here on out, and that's what they're going to be doing moving forward. Of course, they lost Tyler Young this year, but pick 38 for a 27-year-old, 3-year mid-season rookie. That's a pretty good deal from Richmond there, to be completely honest. And look, Taranto's won now, I think, 2 best and fairest since arriving. Got sold a little bit of a falsehood. I don't think he was expecting a full-blown rebuild by the time that he rocked up to the football club. But if you were writing out a list of Richmond problems, if Tim Taranto is in your top 5, 10, lucky you. But no, this has still been a good deal in hindsight. Speaking of grim, hello, St Kilda. But at the end of 20, they traded for Jack Higgins and gave up pick 17, which ended up going from Richmond to Carlton to Geelong, that ended up being Max Holmes, and a future second that ended up being Judson Clark. The reason why I am still considering this the best player for pick deal is it's not like Richmond picked up Max Holmes, which would have absolutely gone, no, this wouldn't work. It's not really St Kilda's fault that this ended up jumping from team to team, ended up becoming a best and fairest winner. So, look, unlucky is where I will sit here. But again, if you want to, am I going to pick Liam Stocker or Paddy Dow or Liam Henry? No. So, yeah, Jack Higgins is where we're at. He's won their goal kicking. I think he won their goal kicking this year, which is awesome. That's a pretty decent deal. An end of first round pick for a guy who's going to be leading the goal kicking. Not too bad in the slightest. And it's not like the Judson Clark pick, unfortunately for him in terms of his health, has come back to bite the Saints in a big way. So still counts as the best one for mine, no matter how kind of grim it sounds seeing Max Holmes' name there. Now to the Swans, and I kind of want to imagine for a second that you could have something in your life for free. Maybe it's rent, mortgage repayments, groceries for life. Sydney looked at Brodie Grundy and went, we're going to have you for free, because the picks that they gave up were pick 46 and a future third, and neither of them were used. They got Brodie Grundy for nothing. And this man was considered in the All-Australian team this year. Now, we know why it didn't work at Melbourne alongside Gawn, so they gave Sydney free reign to take him, but yeah, whoa, this is just, what else can you say? It's extraordinary. Grundy's quality, especially in the back end of the year, for the last 10 weeks of the season, probably was one of the better ruckmen in the competition, if not the best ruckman in the competition. And like I said, they got him for free. Jesus. This is the grimmest of the lot, West Coast. Like, in second place is Tyler Brockman, and that's pretty sad, to be honest. But as nuts as this sounds, because they gave up pick 3 in this deal, the winner kind of still has to be Liam Baker. So they got Liam Baker, Matt Owies, and pick 73, which is Hamish Davis. For pick 3, which of course Jagger Smith to the Blues, pick 63 and 68 that weren't used. Matt Owies was horrible last year for the Eagles. I don't think there's any denying that. I liked what I saw in fleeting moments from Hamish Davis, and they've probably picked up next year's captain. So I don't like this one as much as you do. And if you're a West Coast fan, you probably hate it more than I do. But it is actually the only correct answer. I am so sorry. At the start of the decade, the Bulldogs traded for Adam Treloar. They ended up getting pick 26. That was on-traded for Liam McMahon to be picked up. Pick 33 and 42 for pick 14 that ended up being Ollie Henry. Now, part of the reason why this works, very good servant for the Western Bulldogs. He really has. I know his body's let him down, but I think it's just making him into a really underrated player. On the run, kicking a goal, he's one of the better midfielders in the competition at doing this, and that also includes the fact that one of the best in the competition's his bloody captain, for crying out loud. But he's so good, again, at his peak for the Bulldogs, fully fit, healthy. So 24, he was unbelievable, but finds the footy at will and is an ultra-damaging midfield threat moving forward. Now, could the Bulldogs release him Dane Zorko style off a halfback flank? That would be pretty cool to see, to be honest. Him and Bailey Dale just having no defensive prowess whatsoever. But hey, if we're going to lean into the 1990s Geelong style of things, let's do it. Let's just be the highest scoring team ever, or try to be, and just see where that leads us. I don't particularly mind that, to be honest. Depending on what happens with Riley Sanders, we'll see how that goes. But if you are going to be able to rotate your midfielders through, I'm not sure if Bont, Libba, and Treloar as the 3 is the way to go. I would like to see Joel Frazier through there a little bit more as well. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the Ollie Henry bit for the Pies, well, didn't work out the greatest for them. Like, he was fine, got homesick, kicked 40-odd goals in a season for Geelong. Premiership player, I'm pretty sure. So that part of it didn't really work out for the Pies, but like the deal that they got for Henry, I think he was involved in the Tom Mitchell, Cooper Stevens deal that the Hawks had there as well as part of that 3-way trade. That bit worked out for the Pies beautifully, so it all just joins together in a beautiful little package. And there we go, guys, the best player acquisition trades for your club. Let me know what you think. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Comment below. Let me know. Out of all of these deals, which do you think is the biggest fleece? Again, let me know. But like the video if you like the video, subscribe, join the Daz Talks Footy family. I have plenty more off-season content coming. We've got a massive, and I mean massive, end to the trade period coming. So stick around. Your support for the last couple of weeks has been incredible. And of course, thank you so much for watching. Be kind to one another. I hope you can check out the next video that comes out or a video I've already done. See you next time.